Will fresh accusations fly over the sale of French fighter jets to India? Already there are legal complaints in both countries over the sale of those 36 Rafales and the awarding of a no-bid contract to Modi supporter Anil Ambani. Now newspaper Le Monde reports that Ambani's Reliance company got a 143 million euro tax write-off 2 years ago after an initial request to settle had been rejected. Timing is everything. We're talking about February 2015. That was right when Narendra Modi's team started drawing up those contracts for the Rafale. The economy minister at the time, a certain Emmanuel Macron. Reliance and the French ambassador to India insist the timing is purely coincidental. But Modi's rivals have seized on the story in the midst of India's general elections. More broadly, what does this story say about the politics of big defense contracts? In the France 24 debate, we're looking at France, India, and the Rafale deal. Joining us from Mumbai, Siddharth Bhatia, founding editor of TheWire.im. Thank you for being with us.
Welcome.
Joining us here in the studio, Modi supporter Pradeep Singh is also a businessman. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Jean-Luc Racine, fellow at the French School of Higher Learning, EHESS's Center for South Asian Studies. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
And Joël Ruet, president of the think tank, The Bridge Tank, which advises the G20 on lofty matters.
We tried.
All right. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, #F24debate. Now, according to Le Monde, the tax settlement was sealed at Bercy. Bercy is the French Economy and Finance Ministry's giant office block that overlooks the Seine River in the east of Paris. Le Monde claims the firm had reportedly settled things with Emmanuel Macron. Ellen Gainsford has more.
It's awkward timing for Narendra Modi. The Rafale jet scandal has resurfaced just days after the start of India's election. This weekend, a French newspaper, Le Monde, revealed that France waived millions of euros in tax for a company owned by a friend of the Indian Prime Minister, Anil Ambani. The paper claims a total of 143.7 million euros in taxes were dropped in 2015, just as negotiations for New Delhi to buy 36 Rafale jets from France were kicking into overdrive, a sale worth 8 billion euros. Ambani, chairman of the Reliance Group, was given the role of local partner to French company Dassault, who make the jets, despite his firm having no aviation experience. The opposition Congress Party says Modi favoured his friend in the deal to help his struggling business, accusing the Prime Minister of corruption.
I challenge him for a debate on corruption, and I guarantee you the day Narendra Modi has a debate with me on corruption is the day Narendra Modi will not be able to look into the eyes of anybody in this country.
Modi has denied any misconduct, and for his part says the Congress Party is undermining national security to win votes by threatening the deal. But the story has been seized on by the Indian press and is dogging the Prime Minister as he campaigns for his re-election.
Yeah, just to be clear, Anil Ambani's Reliance Group firmly denies any favoritism or benefit from its tax settlement. On Saturday, the French ambassador to India tweeted the following: "This settlement was conducted in full adherence with the legislative and regulatory framework governing this common practice of the tax administration. It was not subject to any political interference whatsoever." Joël Ruet, was it a coincidence that in February 2015 there was this tax settlement?
Well, I wasn't there and you weren't there, so I think time will tell, the courts will tell. But what is not coincidental is that this kind of information is disclosed at an election time. It's pretty important, it's pretty big. And what gives a different perspective to look also at India and Indo-French relations.
Is this something normal, first of all, this kind of tax settlement? I mean, 2 years previous, the French government rejects a settlement, and now they accept it, just as those negotiations for the Rafales are going into overdrive.
It's obviously not a current practice. Companies don't know about tax exemptions to be a current practice. It's not the case. No, definitely not.
So it's not a coincidence then?
It's not enough to tell, because there are different processes. You have negotiations at the top level, and the negotiations at the top level coincide, the signing coincides with official visits. Sometimes the deals are sealed for a long time, and we wait for the visit. So there is a coincidence for that matter. Now, what's the whole process of an administration will be for the courts to tell.
Is there any way Emmanuel Macron, who was then economy minister, could not have known about this tax settlement?
Well, again, it reminds me of the Tapie affair, Bernard Tapie affair in France. Whenever you have large contracts, whenever you have high intensive capitalism, processes are under scrutiny. Over the last 20 years, the scrutiny has become more and more open. What is a key question today is whether what's the limit of the political responsibility of political makers, and what's the amount of responsibility of the heads of administration. It used to be the responsibility of heads of administration. Nowadays, the society expects the politicians to take the responsibility. Can they take it all? I don't know.
Jean-Luc Racine?
Well, I think, you see, first of all, the Rafale story is a very long one. It started, in fact, in the Indian decision-making circle in the early 2000s. It materialized first in 2007. And the current episode revealed by Le Monde is just adding another slice to a fig cake, if I may say so. And here, of course, there is a new dimension, because if it's a matter of tax exemption, clearly the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs is supposed to be concerned, while this is only the last point of a controversy about the all new deals sealed by Narendra Modi when he came to Paris to meet François Hollande.
So when the French ambassador tweets, it was not subject to any political interference whatsoever, and you look at the timing in February of 2015 for that settlement, do you believe the ambassador?
The ambassador is doing his job, I presume. And of course, I mean, I have no element to say if it's right or if it's not right. But what we are sure is that this piece of information, even if it's denied both by Reliance and by the French embassy, is simply adding to a large controversy running in India today, and it was mentioned in the opening piece there, where the question of Rafale is put fully on the forefront by Rahul Gandhi in its campaign against Narendra Modi. So it's not just a question of knowing if Emmanuel Macron, as the Minister for Finance and Economy at that time, is concerned. The key issue is rather what has happened in India itself and what was the connection between the Indians and the French in this matter, for facilitating a contract which was a kind of new start of a long story. And here we have to remind that at the very beginning, when the previous government was negotiating, it was supposed to be 126 Rafale jet, 18 delivered by France and the rest built up in India. While when Narendra Modi came in suddenly, he changed the rule of the game. He got beyond what was the common procurement rules, and he decided to buy everything on the shelf, as we say, but only 36. So
Yeah.
it's a part of a big controversy. Now, it's too early to know if it may have an impact on the Indian voter.
All right, you mentioned this as having several layers. Bear with me because I'm going to add another one. Back in February, Indian newspaper The Hindu published an internal memo dated November 2015 where the Indian Defense Ministry complained to the Prime Minister about parallel negotiations with the French carried out by Modi's office. And basically, in those negotiations, there was this talk about there was the Reliance Group, which suddenly appears in, quote, the new formula of the negotiations. And that has been an issue on the campaign trail, Siddharth Bhatia. In fact, it's been recently admitted as possible evidence should the case return to the Indian Supreme Court.
Look, that's right. But then again, as we were saying, it's a story that really goes such a long time, 15 years. And there is something very strange that happens in India is that every time something breaks or every time a controversy breaks, there is always the issue of timing. Why now? The problem in India is every now and then there is some election or other going on.
But this wasn't broken by the Indian press. This was broken by French newspaper.
But I'm just saying that, look, it was broken by the French. It was also broken by Hindu. But the issue is that every time there is a news break, it is linked to the timing. Whereas in India, something or other is always happening because of which the timing will always be suspect.
Or the initial deal. You heard Jean-Luc Racine explain how it went from more than 100 planes to 36.
Correct.
This new formula deal, suddenly, that's when we see Anil Ambani appear. And so you have the Indian Defense Ministry complaining to the Prime Minister, saying, why are you carrying out these parallel negotiations? You're undermining us here.
Well, that's right. But then, as some of the ministers in the government have said, these are procedural issues, okay? And the Prime Minister of a country is certainly entitled to negotiate a contract. And the important thing here is that the contract was duly vetted by the Cabinet Committee of Security Affairs of the Government of India. And in fact, the whole procedural aspect was followed by the government, okay? Now, the issue...
But that's where suddenly Anil Ambani appears. And
now,
so thus the accusations leveled by the opposition of crony capitalism.
But there are two issues here. That, look, Anil Ambani was also having some discussions or deals with Dassault prior to Rafale, okay? And today it's not proven that this tax rebate, I'm going by what's available in the public domain, of course, right? This tax rebate is somehow linked to Rafale. Okay, it's not yet proven. That is number one. And secondly, this whole offset clause of the Rafale deal, the 3.9 billion euros, it is actually split among more than 80 Indian companies, of which Anil Ambani is only one. And when you look at the facts and figures, it's just about $1 billion plus.
But he's the privileged partner of Dassault Aviation. He's not just one of those 80 companies.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying it is not, as someone has said in India, that the Prime Minister has taken, I will use the Indian figure of 30,000 crores, or which is 3.9 billion euros, and put it in the pocket of Anil Ambani. And I hold no brief for Anil Ambani, by the way. But if you really break down the figures, then there are so many Indian companies that are involved, and Anil Ambani has a fraction of it, not this 3.9 billion euros that is often alleged during the political rhetoric.
Joël Rouet, is Anil Ambani a bit player in all of this?
If we take one step back, there is an issue. The two countries are not functioning the same way, France and India. In India, especially, which is true with this current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, has tended to centralize the decision-making. You were saying it's normal that the Prime Minister has a foot in it, up to an extent. Narendra Modi, compared to many other Prime Ministers, has a very centralized way of governance. His cabinet meetings are known to last rather 20 minutes than a couple of hours than half a day. That's the first thing. So the second thing is, in those kind of deals, till where do you go? Again, it will be for the Indian polity and for the Indian systems to tell. But what is sure is that in France, there is still a clear divide between political level and the administration. Usually, you would not see the politicians go into the level of those 80 deal makers or of those tax rebates. If they don't go into that, there's no infringement.
All right, but here...
If they go, there's an issue.
We're talking about the Rafale jet, which the French for so many years had been trying to sell. They had failed so many times.
Of course, but
It must be plausible that there's a reason of state at some point where there's the political will.
normally, if the system works well, it's the same for whether you talk about Rafales or nuclear plant, all those large infrastructure, all those large equipment, be they civilian or be they military. The day of a president, the day of a minister has an end. So usually there's a divide of work. And especially in France, the rules are supposed to be that there is a divide of work, there's a divide of labor. So if those rules have been infringed, then there is an issue. But usually, when you talk about the nitty-gritties of 80 companies which have been making or facilitating the deals, it's not the role of the minister to intervene. When you discuss about a change in model, because what Jean-Luc Racine was mentioning, the 36 plus 90 other, the idea was to transfer the technology and to industrialize India based on that. The new model was less a political, an industry, a national level industry plan. It was more a business model. Under US influence,
Anil Ambani